Do you struggle to get sharp photographs and wonder what the pros are doing to achieve super sharp results? In this video, I'm going to share the 6 biggest mistakes pros avoid for sharper photos. I'll show you how easy they are to fix using the gear you already have, and also offer practical advice that helped me capture some amazingly sharp photographs over the last 17 years. Stick around because in a bit I'll share my custom Photoshop sharpening actions that bring out every detail in a photo selectively. Watch out for the discount code during the video to get those for free. Welcome to the channel, everyone. My name is Dumbleton and I'm a professional wildlife photographer from South Africa. I publish videos every Sunday about all things relating to wildlife photography. So if that sounds interesting to you, please consider subscribing to the channel. Picture this: you're photographing a resting lion and a bird immediately flies into the scene. You take a photo of that bird in flight with the shutter speed you had set for the lion. Let's assume the lion was resting and your shutter speed was 1/250th of a second. There is no way a flying bird would be rendered sharp at such a slow shutter speed. It would be a blurry mess. So mistake number 1 is not thinking enough about the movement of your subject and the shutter speed required to freeze that movement. Allocate a minimum shutter speed to a chosen subject and your results will be sharper. Here is a list of minimum shutter speeds I recommend for specific subject types. In a minute, I'll show you a neat trick I use with shutter speeds that is worth trying out that will help improve image quality even further. Wildlife photographers often overlook a crucial mistake that significantly affects image sharpness, especially in details like fur or feathers. Getting the right exposure in camera is key to preserving these details. When a photo is underexposed, it lacks good detail because the camera sensor doesn't capture enough information. Simply put, more light means better detail. To keep your images sharp in low light, increase the ISO setting for proper exposure if you're unable to lengthen your shutter speed or open the aperture. It's important to note though that excessively high ISO levels can compromise sharpness. My advice is to shoot with a higher ISO to achieve a good exposure rather than underexposing at a lower ISO and raising the exposure when editing. Exposing your photograph as bright as possible without clipping the whites will render the cleanest results. While noise reduction can remove noise, it cannot fully recover lost details. So always try to shoot in good lighting conditions to maintain sharpness and minimize noise. Also, I'm not saying you should avoid high ISO settings, just understand that they can impact sharpness in your photos. When taking photos in challenging conditions with low shutter speeds or when hand holding your lens, it's crucial to utilize vibration reduction or image stabilization on your lens or camera to reduce camera shake. Longer focal length lenses will exaggerate camera movement even more, along with cameras with high megapixel sensors. Failure to mitigate camera shake will likely result in blurry images. As mentioned earlier, I use a technique in such situations that allows me to push the boundaries, so to speak, for achieving the best possible image quality. This involves initially taking photos at faster shutter speeds and higher ISOs to capture the moment, then gradually lowering the ISO and shutter speed and taking more photos, allowing me the odd chance of capturing something sharp even at slower shutter speeds, creating cleaner, noise-free results. Being mindful of the impact of subject movement here, it can still cause blur despite VR. To further reduce camera shake, use solid lens support such as tripods or beanbags, particularly when working with larger lenses. Dampening vibrations with your hand and using effective hand-holding techniques can significantly reduce camera shake. On most cameras, there are 2 focus modes, AFS or one-shot and AFC or AI servo. It's essential to understand both modes, but I'll soon recommend only one. In AFS mode, the camera focuses only once per halfway press of the shutter button, maintaining that locked focus until the shutter button is pressed halfway again, making it suitable for focusing and recomposing shots. AFC, on the other hand, continuously adjusts focus when the shutter button is pressed halfway, allowing photographers to maintain focus on moving subjects. This is crucial for wildlife photography, and I always recommend using AFC or autofocus continuous. Avoid using AFS for wildlife photography. It's also worth mentioning that focusing always performs better in good lighting conditions on scenes or subjects that have good contrast. Something I highly recommend using is back button focus. It's a technique where focusing is assigned to a button on the back of the camera instead of the shutter button. This separation allows for more control over focusing. With autofocus separated from the shutter button, I can effectively use AFC similar to AFS, but consistently stay in the AFC mode. Using the back button, I can focus on a subject, release the back button focus, and recompose the photo knowing the focus won't shift. To engage focus again, I simply press the back button. When taking photos outdoors in hot, dusty places like Africa, you may encounter challenges with atmospheric distortion or heat haze, which can affect image sharpness. Heat haze happens when light passes through hot air layers, making photos look wavy or blurred. It's worse on hot, sunny days, and the more air the photographer shoots through, the worse the effect becomes. To mitigate the effects of heat haze, shoot during the cooler times of the day, such as early morning or late afternoon. Of course, if you want to show the effect of heat, shoot during the hot hours. This can definitely add a lot of drama when used correctly. When capturing wildlife portraits, especially close-up shots, make sure to focus on the priority area, typically the eyes. Also make sure to pay attention to the depth of field when taking the shot. The eyes serve as the focal point, and as long as they are sharp, the image will be perceived as sharp overall. Additionally, out of focus areas can effectively emphasize the sharp areas. Controlling depth of field is crucial to covering the important areas of the subject, ensuring that key elements remain in focus while background distractions are minimized. Depth of field can be adjusted by widening or narrowing the aperture of your lens. However, it is important to note that using a shallow depth of field comes with inherent risks, such as the potential for parts of the subject to be out of focus if not carefully managed. As promised, here is how I use Photoshop to bring out exceptional detail in a photograph for display on the internet or social media. These custom sharpening actions employ a step-by-step sharpening technique that allows precise control over the effect, and together with the subject selection allows only the subject to be sharpened, protecting the softer, out-of-focus details from being sharpened. More details on these actions can be seen on the link to my website in the description below. Now that you're able to avoid certain mistakes that rob your photos of sharpness, make sure to avoid critical mistakes when editing them. So check out this video next, where I talk about why your Lightroom edits might be bad.